Ash Ketchum versus Gary Oak has to be one of the biggest rivalries of all time, because we have matchups like Batman versus Joker, Goku versus Vegeta, Naruto versus Sasuke, Luca versus Devin Booker, but nothing seems to hit as different as Ash Ketchum versus Gary Oak. Having one of your biggest haters being a Nepo baby, grandson of Professor Oak, and somehow being able to drive at 10 years old, it can really make you look in the mirror and think, damn, I want to beat this guy's ass. So let's go over the entire rivalry of Ash Ketchum versus Gary Oak, on how it started really brutal, leading to such great matches, all the way to Gary being a little softer in the later seasons. The first time we see Ash and Gary interacting is when Ash is trying to get his starter Pokemon, but he literally cannot enter Professor Oak's lab because Gary's cheerleading squad is blocking the entrance. When Ash gets through the crowd, he ends up meeting Gary, and Gary just starts talking a bunch of trash, telling Ash that he's dumb and just degrading him in front of the Pokemon Center. And by now, I would have already been throwing hands, but Ash is a way better man than me and is just tanking all the verbal abuse from Gary. It eventually ends off with Gary's entire squad of people watching just him get his starter Pokemon, cheering him on. These crowd of people are so brainwashed because the second Gary leaves the lab, they just end up following him in his car. And since then, Ash has been determined to be better than Gary, since this guy's entire existence is just trying to belittle Ash. Now, even though Ash and Gary's rivalry is really well known, we don't actually see a lot of them in the early episodes at all. Most of the time when we hear of Gary or even see him, it's just another character telling Ash how much better Gary is than him. Like, I'm not even joking. Versus Professor Oak, then Misty's sisters.
If you study the leader's attacks before every match, you can choose the best Pokemon to beat him.
Excellent strategy. That's my grandson.
This isn't even the worst of it, because when Ash is heading to Cerulean City, Gary is out there leaving hate mail for Ash to see, saying that he made it here first and got the gym badge first. And the next time we see Ash and Gary interact face to face since the first episode of the Pokemon anime is where Ash is walking into a random store and Gary slams his face with the door, not even acknowledging Ash's existence, and then a few seconds later, Ash gets a gun pulled on him by the store owner. And honestly, they do not make rivals like this anymore. The impression Gary may leave is that he's a very powerful trainer that has a lot of Pokemon and traveling the region, but every time we see him, he's legitimately just making fun of Ash or being in a location to bully him. It's at the point where I have no idea what he even does. The first time we actually see Gary Oak battle is against the 8th gym leader in Viridian City, who is Giovanni, using a Mewtwo in a mecha suit. If this isn't cheating, I don't know what is. Heading back to Gary's match, obviously he lost this, but I'm not ready to call Gary a fraud yet, since I don't know anyone in this series who would win this battle against Giovanni. So Ash and Gary will be able to prove themselves to see who is the strongest trainer at the Pokemon League. This is the main thing they've been working towards, so the battle they'll have will be legendary in this tournament. But before we can go any further, have you ever wanted to learn how to code, but it's way too confusing or way too boring? That's where Boot.dev comes in, the sponsor of today's video. Boot.dev manages to gamify coding with XP, quests, and bosses so that you are never bored. It's online and completely self-paced, where you'll be able to learn back-end web development from start to finish in Python, SQL, and Go. And just like in Pokemon, where you always have a companion by your side, Boot.dev's community is really great on Discord, with tons of humans to help you out if you ever get stuck. Boot.dev has also recently launched a training grounds mode. It's a place where you can learn and grind infinite challenges and practice as much as you need before moving forward with coursework, since as we all know, grinding is the most important part. The median salary for backend developers last year was over 100,000, so these are really valuable skills to pick up if you want to get into the field. So act now and go to boot.dev and use my code linked below to get 25% off your first year annual plan. Thank you so much, boot.dev, for sponsoring today's video. Ash and his friends end up making it to the Indigo League, and Ash ends up advancing far, and you must be wondering, where is Gary in this tournament? I was wondering the same thing too, until I realized this man Gary got eliminated so early in the Indigo League that he never got an opportunity to face Ash. And there are people like this that have teams of baby Pokemon making it to the top 16. So how the hell did Gary get eliminated? By this point, I was really questioning if Gary was on fraud watch, since he kind of just talks trash, and anytime we see him battle, he just loses. I'm really starting to question if he had fake gym badges at this point, because his ass had like 10 of them. Gary himself probably started to realize this, so the first time Ash and Gary actually fight is is after the tournament where he has his Eevee versus Ash's Pikachu, and I'll give Gary credit where credit is due. This Eevee was putting in a lot of work and it was able to beat Ash's Pikachu. This loss only made Ash want to beat Gary even more, so in this season of the Pokemon anime, they finally had their long-awaited full tournament match to finally figure out who is the best trainer from Pallet Town. Right before this match, we do end up learning lore that before Ash and Gary went on an adventure, they were like fishing together and found a Pokeball, and they ended up splitting it, and they both kept two halves of the Pokeball, which kind of humanizes Gary, showing he wasn't always an asshole. But now we're in their final big Pokemon battle in the Johto League. The match starts off with Gary sending out Nidoqueen and Ash sending out Tauros. Obviously, this went as bad as you thought it did. Tauros got absolutely destroyed by Nidoqueen. Ash decided to step it up by sending out Heracross, which isn't really a bad Pokemon until you realize Gary is smart and returns Nidoqueen and sends out Magmar to have the type advantage. Where was this Gary the whole time in the Indigo League? Because he could have went further. Surprisingly, Heracross is able to endure a bunch of fire and actually manages to knock out Magmar, evening the playing field. Gary realized it's time to take this battle seriously and sent out his starter Pokemon Blastoise. The second this Pokemon gets on the field, Gary's cheerleading squad starts cheering him on, and these people have been following him throughout multiple regions now. I don't know what payroll they're on, but they must be getting paid good. When Blastoise starts to fight, he obliterates a ton of Ash's Pokemon like he's genuinely going on a rampage, even winning a battle against Bayleaf, who had the type advantage against him. And the main highlight of Ash and Gary's battle is Blastoise versus Charizard. Don't ask why Ash didn't use Pikachu in this battle, it's beyond me. When Charizard versus Blastoise began, it was clear Charizard was at a major disadvantage for the obvious reason that he's weak to water, and for some reason in this battle, this terrain is bad for Charizard and Blastoise has the advantage because he's hiding behind a bunch of rocks. Charizard couldn't get near Blastoise at all since he was blasting a bunch of Hydro Pumps at him, and when Charizard was able to throw a few attacks at Blastoise, he tucked himself into his shell to bob and weave the attack. This back and forth between the two Pokemon kept going on for a while until Ash got the genius idea for Charizard to make the terrain so hot so that when Blastoise uses water, it creates a bunch of steam. So then Charizard was able to get up close and personal, pick up Blastoise, fly him up into the sky using Seismic Toss, Charizard's signature move. And if you know anything about Charizard's Seismic Toss, once he uses it, the opponent is basically dead, because when they came crash landing, Blastoise was knocked out and Ash had won the battle, finally defeating Gary in their second match ever, or their first full match, and ending this multi-region rivalry once and for all. After this loss, Gary ended up retiring from doing Pokemon leagues and became like a Pokemon researcher, or just wandering around the region and bumping into Ash whenever, and he completely lost all of his ego and his cheerleading squad and his limo, so he just became like a normal trainer and no longer having beef with Ash. I can't say the same for Ash's future rivals, so if you want to know about Paul, who is actually mean throughout the entire arc against Ash, click the video on your screens as I cover that rivalry, and I think it's a little more brutal than Ash versus Gary. You guys are seriously the best, and make sure to like and hype the video. There's a new feature on YouTube. If you click the like button, it says you can hype it, and we'll see if the video goes crazy or if it's like a useless feature. I'll catch you all next time.